Hello YouTube, this is Open World Addict, and I love open world games, and Kerbal Space Program is one of those games that's not just open world, but open system, open galaxy if you will. It's just so much fun, and I just want to go a little walkthrough for very new people to this game. This is an alpha. It's 0.24, but it's still a wonderful thing. They've done a lot of work on it, and I think anybody who was excited about rocket launches and reading all about the space program, if you ever attended space camp, or played Ball Aldrin, Race to Space, or anything like that, then you might be interested. But I want to show this to the people who might be intimidated by this, and who know nothing of rocket science, nothing about orbital maneuvers and mechanics, nothing about physics, nothing about that. They may be intimidated by this, and I want to take them through some simple launches. This is going to be my first launch today. And to show them how to do things in a way that they won't be overwhelmed or even intimidated, right? They won't be overwhelmed or intimidated by this game. So if you're one of those, follow me. So now, before you get started, you do want to do the training. There's plenty of them. Ignore these last two. You definitely want to do all these. These will teach you the basics of the game. And really ignore the scenarios. Impending impact is nice, but really ignore the scenarios. What we want to do is we want to start new, and I'm going to call this test. This is our tutorial. Now, they have 3 modes in the new version of Kerbal Space Program: Career, Science, and Sandbox. When you're first starting out, you really want to avoid Career, Science, and you want to go for Sandbox. Sandbox is where you're going to be testing the waters and figuring out what you can do, what you cannot do, trying to get things into orbit, trying to get things to other planets, etc., etc. It basically allows you to do anything. You're free to play without any constraints. All parts and features are available from the start, and you can really test the waters out. Once you get an idea of how to get things done, then you might want to start the science, and that introduces another element of the game that you have to worry about. And actually, it changes the game entirely, because you have to start from the beginning with reduced amount of parts, and so you have to basically learn again. But with the basics that you picked up in Sandbox mode, you should be able to really figure out what you can do and what will earn you more science. That is not for this tutorial. That is for another tutorial. I'll put some links in the description box of this video to a YouTuber that has done a lot of videos on this subject, including the career mode, science career mode, as it was in the previous version. His name is Scott Manley, and so I'll put a link to that series in the description box. But in the meantime, let's get going. And here we are. Now, let me just tweak the settings. Here's take 2. I was trying to change the settings and because the sound was too loud, and for some reason the game decided to go bonkers on me and crash. So I am sorry about that. I'll be back when it's done loading and when I'm back actually in the game and it's working. Okay, we're back again in Kerbal Space Program, and I think I resolved the issues. I hope the sound is not too loud. Anyway, so now I have 2 mods installed, and they are, if we go to this panel, they are Kerbal Engineer Redux and MechDeb. Now, I'm not going to use MechDeb for now. But if we go here, all this information is not important to you. I'll show you what it is important. But you'll need to get that off of the Kerbal mods on Curse, and another time I'll be showing you how to install mods. Later time I'll be showing you how to install mods using a program called KSP Mod Admin, which really helps you. The 2 things you want to get, the 3 things you want to get is Kerbal Engineer. I'll explain that for a moment. In a moment, Kerbal MechDeb, which is short for Mechanical Jebediah. That I'll explain later on. And then finally, you want to get a mod that puts the 2 of them into most of your parts. So you don't have to, you see, over here you have the MechDeb part, and over here you have, where is it? Where is it? There it is. That is, I believe that's the Kerbal Engineering part. I think. I don't think there's anything else. But basically, the 3rd mod I have puts all those basic parts into all of these pods, which allows you to just start building, and it adds them to the pod without having to add extra parts. So we're going to build a space probe, because a space probe is lighter, it's easier to get up into space and orbit and do all kinds of stuff with it, and it is a good starting point. Whereas if you look at this has a mass of 4, this has a mass of 0.1. So yeah, it is much, much, much lighter. Now, in order to get this into orbit, we're going to need a fuel tank. But before we get a fuel tank, what we're going to want is a decoupler. So we'll get a decoupler, and heck, we'll pretend that it has a Kerbal on it, and we'll put a parachute. Let's get rid of that. We'll put a parachute on it. And then we want to go for some fuel. And then an engine. And this is our basic thing. Now if you look here, you'll see stage 0, stage 1. And None of these is important. What is important is the thrust to rate ratio. What that means is not important. What you do want to know is that this remains pretty high so that you get as much thrust out of it. Now this is going to be our final stage, and as a final stage, thrust is not that important. And this matters when you're trying to get it out of the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is very thick, and so you want a high thrust to rate ratio so that you can get it out of the atmosphere without using that much fuel. For a final stage, this is more important, because this will show how much time we can have our engine going at full throttle. And this is it's actually more than enough. So if we take this off, yeah, that's that's plenty to get us into outer space. And all this information is only if you have Kerbal Engineer Redux, as you can see the title. There's other things, really, you don't need it. You could do it as compact, but it doesn't show you the burn time. So that's why we want this full thing. So now that we have our final stage, we move that up. Then we want a stage that will get it out of the atmosphere. And it does not have to be that big. So what we're going to do is we're going to put another stack decoupler. And we're going to put two of these on, with maybe one or two of those, we'll see. And then we put an engine on it, which we want the LT45 engine, because as you can see, it has max thrust is less, but if you read it carefully, it has thrust vectoring, and you do want thrust vectoring. So that has a thrust to rate ratio of 2 minutes with a burn time of 1 minute. That's perfect for getting us upper atmosphere, but now we want a final stage. And this doesn't have to be fancy. We want a final stage to get ourselves out of the lower atmosphere. And to tell you the truth, I may be overdoing it a bit. You know what? Yes. No, that's not enough time. So let's go like that. We're just under 1 minute. You know what? I'm gonna put back. We do want the extra time. I'm looking at the burn time. So you notice this stage 1, which is that stage, which by the way we want to split up. So it's now stage 2 has a thrust rate ratio. Stage 0 doesn't matter. Thrust rate ratio of 1.7. And that's pretty good itself. But we want a little bit more. So now we'll go to put on 3 of these, and one important thing about building rockets is you want symmetry, because that will make them go the way you want them to go. And we will put on 3 of these small ones, which should have enough 30 seconds to burn. That should be enough to get us out. Let's just put a cone on so that it doesn't take up too much atmosphere and burn up. And I think that is good. Now we do want some other things. We want some struts to attach these together, as well as attaching these to here, so that everything is connected. It won't try to fly apart. Anything else? Not that I could think of. And all this information is good. We have 30 seconds to get out of the atmosphere, maybe 1 minute, and then 2 minutes to get into orbit, and then with maybe a little bit of fuel to get back down. So, again, I'm not reading all this information. I'm not reading the delta V. None of that you have to worry about. Only the thruster weight. You want to make sure that it's high, which you got a 3.74. That's good, and a good amount of burn time. And I like this. So now let me just back that. Make sure everything, staging is correct. Staging is basically how things will go off. So when you first press spacebar, these will go off first, and then they'll disconnect. By the way, I want these to disconnect at the same time that engine goes off. And the same thing with that, so that I don't have to work too much work with staging. And so then when these disconnect, that will go off, and when that disconnects, that will go off. And then finally that will disconnect, and then the parachute will come out. So that is staging. It is not that complex to figure out. You see, this is my 4th stage, this is my 1st stage. Anyway, so I think, without further ado, I'm sure I'm missing something. Oh, do you know what? Yes, I am. We're gonna want, one of these control surfaces. This will be enough, just to give it some, more stability. That shouldn't change the information here. Correct. Okay, let's launch this beast and see how it flies. So now, before Kerbal Engineer, when you launched a rocket, when it got to a certain height, you would need to turn it, and then go to your map mode and try to set up maneuver nodes. But I'm going to show you how to launch this without going to the map node entirely, and possibly even get into orbit. For that purpose, we're gonna open this orbital window that comes with Flight Engineer. You can actually do it this way also. That turns out that and turns it back on. Very easy. Now MagJeb is also over here and also over here. We won't worry about MagJeb. We will be able to do this all on our own with Kerbal Engineer. And the important information you need to know. This is not really relevant. It's only useful for landing. The important information you need to know is the apoapsis height, the time to apoapsis, and then eventually the periapsis height. Now, so here is the atmospheric gauge. When we get to about 10,000 feet, 10,000 meters, we will leave the lower atmosphere, the thicker part of the atmosphere. And then at 69,000 meters, we will leave the atmosphere altogether. What we want to do is we want to start turning in the direction that the planet is rotating, so that we want to get into orbit. And getting into orbit means that our periapsis and our apoapsis, which is the two points of an orbit, an elliptical orbit, we want them to get out of the atmosphere entirely. We want to have them above 69,000 feet. A more reasonable orbit is about 1,000 meters, 100,000 meters. And in order to do that, in order to get that, it's going to be easier if we turn in the direction that the planet is moving. The planet is moving towards the right, and so if we move towards the right, that will help us get into orbits faster. If we go towards the left, that's actually fighting against the forces of nature, fighting against the emotions. You don't know you don't need to know what they are. You just need to know that you don't want to fight against things. You want to go with things, get things done quicker, faster, that way. So we're going to go in that direction. Now, let's go back. Now that I explained anything, let's launch. We're going to turn on the stabilization system, called the SAS, and we're going to throttle all the way. Well, actually, that should be enough. So, we're going to throttle and then we're going to hit space to launch. And it is kind of noisy. Okay, and so we're almost out of the lower atmosphere. thicker part of the atmosphere. The solid rocket boosters are gone, and now we're gonna turn slightly to 60 degrees on the nav ball and try to maintain that. Now what we're looking for is our apoapsis height. Climbing to 40,000. 50,000. 60,000. 70,000. 80,000. 90,000. And cut. Okay, so now if we just quickly go to the map, that is our orbit. Now we want to, however, change it. So what we're going to do is we're now going to go to 10 degrees, or actually 5 degrees, and we're going to wait until we're almost at the cusp. We're in about 1,000 meters or less from our destination altitude. We want to do it before we hit our apoapsis. And so we're basically out of fuel, so let's get in that version. I think we should have enough fuel to reach orbit. And we also have, you can see the time to periapsis, that's a good gauge also. That's basically 30 seconds, 40 to 30 seconds before you reach your apoapsis. And so, I think this is a good time to start our burn. And we're looking for the periapsis height. That we want to get that to, so right now it's 400. It's gonna rapidly go down and then climb. As it climbs to above to the positive, we're gonna want to slow down so that it doesn't get out of control. Down a little bit now. Slow down a little bit more. A little bit more. A little bit more. And a little bit more. And what's going on? Oh, electric charge. I had totally forgotten about that. You see, that's why we're in sandbox mode. Okay, let's start again. Yes, the only problem with these vehicles, we almost did it. We almost got it. But we forgot that in order to maneuver them, to do anything with them, they need electricity. So, with that in mind, let's add some batteries and solar panels. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add the small battery on top of there, and then we're gonna cover this thing and that should give it enough energy to get up. I totally, you see, that mind that it needs an electric charge to do anything. It totally skipped my mind. So, why don't we try this again? Let's launch. Solar panels really don't weigh that much. Neither do the, again, we'll launch. No need to explain things. Maybe it's a little bit heavier than it was before, but I think we'll be alright. Okay, now turn to 60 degrees. And watch our apoapses go up. $100,000. Still have a little bit of fuel left. Let's turn to maybe 5 degrees. And wait until we get to and actually, I have full faith in this. This can be done entirely with our final stage. So I'll let that stage go. Which makes us a little bit more flexible. And doesn't weigh us down as much. And we just make little adjustments to make sure that we're on the mark while we're waiting from the 30 seconds out to Alpha's time. 40. Let's start it now. And we want to keep it a little bit over the horizon. So we're still going up. Not too much over the horizon. To stay within 20 to 30 seconds from Alpha. If we get too high, we're gonna. Okay, so we're gonna tilt that way a little bit more so that because we're getting too high. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna help. But bring it back now. Let's bring it back even more. Bring it back even more. 70,000, 80,000, 90,000. Let's go down a little to try to drop our periapsis. Alphaapsis, I mean. And cut. And we have made orbit. And we have some fuel left. If you got it this far, I say congratulations. You got it on your own without any help from NetJeb. It's not a perfect orbit. It's not a circular orbit. But it is an orbit. And we did nothing with the maneuver nodes. We did nothing with the maneuver nodes. Absolutely nothing. And we didn't use NetJeb. All we used is this orbital information to get ourselves into orbit. And that is an achievement. So I think we'll bring this thing back down before it gets dark. It's actually going to get dark pretty soon. So actually, yeah, we're actually going to bring it down once. We're actually going to bring it down, turn it. We're actually going to bring it down when the sun comes up. And so, let's speed it up a little bit. The sun will be coming up in 22 minutes. So you do have time acceleration, just don't abuse it. And don't use it when you're trying to make maneuvers. So the sun is about to come up. And so I think this is time to make our re-entry burn. So now for orbital burn, we're going we're not actually following our program director. We were going in our own direction, and that forced the program director to turn to the direction we were going into. To go forward, you basically go with the program director. To go in reverse, to go back down, you go to your retrograde director. There's your prograde. That's with the circle, with nothing inside, and then the retrograde is with the X inside. And so we're gonna go retrograde, and there comes the sun, beautiful as always, and we're just gonna hit start the engines a little bit, and watch our periaps drop. You don't need to go to the menu to do this. All we need to do is watch our periaps drop, and once it's under once it's under 10,000 meters, that's enough. It's a slow burn. Maybe we'll pick it up even more. Some. Something's changed, as you can see, and that's enough. By the time it gets that deep into the atmosphere, there's no way back out. It's a point of no return. So and now keeping our ship in retrograde fashion is actually a good it's a good way to do things, because that means we will basically coming down backwards, which in the real world is how they do things. Not with the space shuttle, but with capsules, that's the way they do things, because otherwise the capsule will burn up. So always making sure that the net apple is focused on the retrograde vector, which means we're heading backwards towards our destination. And if we look at the map, that's not too far away. The Kerbal Space Center there, that's not too far away. That's pretty good. No, the periaps might fall even more as we get into the thicker parts of the atmosphere, and so that's actually not accurate. We could, if we wanted to, use a little bit more fuel to push it further, but I don't want to. Landing exactly at Kerbal takes little practice. You will need to do that for some of the missions in the career mode, which is why you're going to need to practice that kind of thing here in Sandbox and also Science mode, so that you get used to trying to land it back at Kerbal. But really, in this mode, and even in Science, it's really not necessary. I'm not going to do that. I'm not that good yet. So we're actually going to pick up some time, and because it's taking a long time. And as you notice, once we hit the atmosphere, time warp goes back down to 0. time warp ends because it doesn't allow you to go beyond the certain point when you reach the atmosphere, and we have to adjust. Now, let's leave this and go to this. This is kind of important when you're landing. The important thing to see is the altitude of the terrain. If that is high, then you will want to do things a little bit earlier. I've had some close calls with not paying attention to this. So paying attention to the altitude of the terrain is important. Altitude. That's altitude above the terrain. I think. Okay. Anyway, we're going to launch the last stage before we hit the ozone layer. So we will, but before we do that, we will separate these two so that the two don't happen at the same time. And so we've separated, and that's just before we enter the ozone layer. Decouple. There we go. You see, we're coming in at a good angle. Well, no, I still have electric charge. And why? Because that is weird. And now we're just gonna let it fall. And we're gonna release the parachute when it gets under 10,000 feet. That's the proper way of doing things. You don't want the thing to rip off. Obviously, we're coming closer to the ocean, so the altitude might as well. And actually, we're gonna land right here. We won't even get over to the ocean. As it shows. Now I'll deploy the chute. So anyway, while this is going down, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope there wasn't too much information, I hope it wasn't too overwhelming for you, and I hope you understand what I was trying to show you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the description box, and I will try to answer them as soon as possible. And if you want to see more advanced types of missions, maybe to the The next one would be to the moon. I'll show you. I may do them anyway, but I think after we land this thing safely, I think that will be all for today. Going to different destinations require a different thought process. It requires more fuel, and you'll need even more burn time in your later stages. So that is something to consider. So the parachute opens 500 above the terrain. We're at 200 above the terrain, so you can't really tell that this is a mountainous area. It's also desert. Oh, here it goes. Impact altitude. This is what you want to look for. 838. So, that's kind of high. Again, get Kerbal Engineer. I will make an addendum to this video showing you the KSP mod admin, just so you know how it works. It makes installing mods for KSP a lot easier. It's basically a mod manager for a KSP. And we're about 100 feet from the surface. And if you look, oh, there's the shadow. Thirty meters, I mean. 10 meters. And touchdown. And we have landed safe. And now we can recover vessel. And that's how it's done. It's a first launch. It gets you into orbit and then back down. Of course, if you want to, you could try crewed manned vessels, but you just know that you'll need more thrust, more power to get it out because they are heavier. So in a second, I'll be back to show you some of the KSP mod admin. Hello everybody, I'm back again, and this is KSP mod admin. You can get that by going to kspcurseforge.com, KSP mods, and look for KSP mod admin. And basically, it allows you to install. It lets you to search and install mods just from this interface. These are the mods I haven't loaded, and in the mod browser, it takes you to the CurseForge, and where you can look up there are hundreds of mods. And this is basically an easy way to mod your game without having to.
That does sound like us.
Okay. Stop. Let's go to interrupting my video. Gee. Okay. Sorry about that. So, once you download them here, they will appear here, and then you can just click them to install them. See, if I deselect that, and I reselect, and then I say selected mods, it will install them and load them into the game. Now, I have 4 mods here. I have Kerbal Engineer and MechJab. MechJab I didn't show you because for what I was showing you, we didn't need it. As a matter of fact, for the next video, we won't need it either. But we may need it for future videos. And I installed this mod, MechJab and Engineer for All. Now, if we look, I believe there are, you see there's MechJab Embedded Universal, and then Kerbal Engineer Embedded. So there, there's somewhere. I believe there's separate mods that if you don't want both, you can have one or the other. But what this does is that you see it basically, if we go back, it basically, it hurts. It basically puts the flight engineer, build engineer, and MechJab computer on, and any pod so that you can add them to any craft, and it does make things easier, and you don't have to add weight to get those things. So, and of course that requires these 2 mods. Ship manifest I will talk about later on. It's nice, but you don't need it until you're doing things like rendezvousing and building space stations, and that is much more advanced. But, so, if you want to follow along this tutorial, then go get KSP mod admin, install MechJab and Engineer, maybe MechJab Engineer for All, and then you'll be set, and you'll have the same access to the same things I had in game. So, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this. I think I will be making another video how to reach the moon and Midness and maybe other planets. I won't be necessarily landing on those other everything, but yeah, basically this tutorial is less science, less. You don't have to know as much, and you could do more, especially with these mods. So I hope none of that was overwhelming. As I said, post a comment if you have a question. I'll try to answer it to the best abilities, and there will be a link in the description box for Scott Manley's channel and videos, because he does an awesome job with explaining Kerbal Space Program. So anyway, see you all later. Bye.